and those things. So what I wanted to do today is bring attention to a particular writing that has a slew of different information in there, and I'm going to kind of stop and pause here and there to actually bring up some of, or further discuss some of the information, because for some of us we may have been reading this information over time, and for others we have, some people are just playing with the thought of they don't want to get a virus, in this case coronavirus. I just wrote an article, I'm just remembering that, on coronavirus. Just wrote an article. Partially was because I think if we can actually understand certain things quite simply, it's going to be very, very helpful. Coronavirus is really something that they discovered back in the 1960s. I'm going to put the article link down below. So just going from memory here, the coronavirus is something that is like an umbrella. So the SARS virus that had come about a couple times in the year, and here in Toronto we were affected, that's also under the umbrella of the coronavirus. Now, if you're looking at particularly the scenario around China and this happening right now, it has its particular name that they give it, and that will be the particular coronavirus in this case. Now, I am going to go through this, read through this email article thing, and I'm going to stop and pause and kind of explain. Hello Shaheen, it's great to see you, and any questions here at all, welcome. Welcome any questions. I think if I can inject here right now that there are no bad questions, if you remember that from school or certain presentations, there are no bad questions. In fact, getting used to asking questions is going to be very, very important, and either to bring yourself up to speed. People are different things. So this is the title of this particular information I'm going to read is called China, Epidemic Cases with No Coronavirus. So epidemic cases. Epidemic is what they're kind of talking about now, but with no coronavirus. Now let me explain here. This information, I want to tell you right now, this information is actually from an investigative reporter. I'm going to go through his name, and I'm going to see if I can find this on his website and actually post it. Hopefully it won't get taken down. But the idea is John was a candidate for the U.S. congressional seat in the 29th District, California, and he's been practicing with private clients, and he's actually been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. He's worked as an investigative reporter for over 30 years. He's written a number of articles on politics, on medicine, and health for CBS, Health Watch, LA Weekly, Stern, other magazines and newspapers as well, in the US, in Europe, and he has delivered many lectures on and seminars on global politics and health logic and creative power to audiences around the world. So this is where this information is coming from. I wanted to make sure that I actually speak to that, and we keep an open mind here. And I want to speak to a couple things here, because one of the things is we can all sit here and read all kinds of information, but we do not know really without being there. So we could get conflicting information. We could get information from this person and that person, but this fella, John the investigative reporter, I really like his style, because it's not about telling you what is without him knowing that it is such. So there's very good questions, and I have researched and read and taken in information again from an open perspective. So we've got it open here. So during 30 years of investigating epidemics, so I'm reading this from the article, I've looked for causes that have nothing to do with the latest and greatest virus. Now, in other words, he says, what else could be causing the symptoms of the illness? Now, so this is very important here. So China epidemic cases with no coronavirus, right? So we have cases here that are being tested and there is no coronavirus. And the idea is, this question here is, what else could be causing the symptoms of the illness? So this is very, very important. The title and the first line is extremely important for me to talk further and to read some of these things and for us to kind of get a sidebar perspective of what's going on in China and possibly what's going on elsewhere in the world. So we really just have to listen and take in the information. So, what else could be causing the symptoms of the illness if they're not finding the coronavirus in people who are having all of these symptoms? So, in the current corona epidemic, the one condition that has been emphasized is pneumonia. Now, for most people here, pneumonia, if you have bronchitis, you kind of, weakened respiratory system. But here now, let's think about this as the respiratory system, pneumonia. Okay, remember that. And let's go in here. Standard medical tests will tell you that viruses, bacteria, and fungi can cause pneumonia. Okay, so here we're thinking very simple. Things that are causing colds, the things that are bringing us down, the flus and stuff, viruses, bacteria, fungi. They talk about mold now more and more as well. And so add to that the heavy, polluted, toxic air that's in the Wuhan area, as well as other Chinese cities. This has been going on for months. This is the whole coal thing. So they have been speaking to this in illness. So you're going to be blown away by these numbers that are going to come up here. Now, what we also can add into here, which is also known when we think of the, if you've read the China study, in China there's a lot of malnutrition. So add in extreme malnutrition. So you do not need a coronavirus to explain cases of pneumonia in China. Okay, so all right, he goes on. So how many deaths from pneumonia occur in China well before the appearance of this coronavirus? Now the estimates will vary because as he goes on here to say getting information from a communist country like China isn't the easiest. Let's just say that, right? Okay, so estimates vary, he says. Here is one based on analysis of studies. 2.8 million to 17 million deaths per year. And he quotes the source here as well. Pneumonia incident and mortality in mainland China from 2010. So we're not talking about something that doesn't happen and it has been happening in the last 30 years in China. So whether it's 2.8 million or whether it's 17 million, it's a lot of people. So if you're going to be coming on here a little bit later, we're talking about the coronavirus. We're talking about how the cases in China are being discovered with no coronavirus. All right. So the wide variance in these death numbers obviously is the result in trying to integrate Chinese language and English language studies, the huge expanse of territory that's in China, the huge population, the possible attempts within China to conceal true statistics. He goes on. So what is all of this telling us? It tells us now that there's a gigantic pool of people with pneumonia in China who can be falsely labeled deaths from the coronavirus. Now that's not all, okay? So there are other categories of illness that can be merged with pneumonia in the rush to diagnose people with the coronavirus, okay? Now I'm talking about lower lung infections and influenza, and the mortality numbers leap even higher. Okay, so besides pneumonia, there's other things that are happening. And when you have malnutrition, that, and stress from that, the immune system, nervous system, the whole body is not as strong to fight these things. It's just, that's common sense, but also out there. So he goes on, you might rightly ask, so why hasn't pneumonia all by itself been labeled an epidemic in China in these past years? Why hasn't the World Health Organization at the very least declared a state of emergency for China based on pneumonia? Remember, these are big numbers, millions of people. There's not that many that have died, and it's sad for anybody to die, of course. But again, most of reading this is for more and more people to be aware what might be at play here, okay? So, as he goes on, I like the way he says this, you can bet your bottom dollar that if the corona epidemic was to reach 2 million deaths in China, the entire planet would be on a lockdown tight, and no one anywhere would be able to leave home. So both atheists and end-of-time prophets would be shouting that the extinction of all human life was upon us. And he's got a bit of humor here. Persons in high places would be meeting and saying the only solution would be to nuke the earth and start over. So kind of getting beside that craziness there. So let's consider for a moment how easy it would be to label pneumonia outside China with the coronavirus tag. If they can do it in China, they can do it anywhere. In fact, this has happened with other flus that have happened even in the US, where it took weeks for them to get the right study, the right thing. You remember, every year there's flus going around and people getting sick. So it turned out a majority of them wasn't even that flu epidemic that they were talking about. I think I'm talking about the H1N1, but nonetheless, so as in the virus is spreading, everywhere. We know how flus and colds work that way. So here's a quote: globally, about 200 million cases of the viral community-acquired pneumonia occur every year. 100 million in children and 100 million in adults. So think of pneumonia. This is the key thing that the coronavirus is coming up with as a symptom in China. And this pneumonia, just kind of regurgitate here again, bring it up again, this pneumonia is killing millions. I think they mentioned, let's just go 2.5 million to 17 million Chinese people every year. Okay, it's a lot. So pneumonia is one of the symptoms, and they're not finding the coronavirus in every case within China. Do they want you to know that? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not going to make anything up here. So pneumonia is only called coronavirus if the patient is tested and the virus is discovered. Otherwise, it's just ordinary coronavirus. But you have to understand, they're moving quickly through this epidemic, and you're sick with it. They're just assuming it's the coronavirus. So these, first of all, the whole thing that's kind of coming out is that they don't take the time to do the test. It takes time. So everything kind of moves in quickly. And of course, when you have pneumonia, temperature rises. You get flu, all different various things of flu-like symptoms happening in there. So, you just kind of have to understand this, how this sometimes works and has worked, not just for the coronavirus, but other viruses that they have called flu or epidemic, and later to find, but not to tell the good people, that it wasn't even that at all. So most people are thinking we've got epidemics, we could get an epidemic, and that's not the case. So in here, an antibody test at best only indicates the patient has come in contact with the virus. Okay, this is very important to understand. The antibody test, so this is one of the tests, only says it becomes in contact with it. It says nothing about whether he is going to become ill. In fact, before 1984, a positive reading antibody test was generally taken to mean the patient was in good shape. His immune system had defeated the germ in question. But then after 1984, the science was turned on its head, and a positive test was falsely taken to mean the patient was ill or would soon become ill. So that's, when our immune system and our systems can have it within our system, but it doesn't really mean. It could mean the immune system, as far as antibodies goes, has successfully fought against it. And we're not just talking this virus, it could be other virus. So the idea is that some of these tests that they might be doing might be completely offside as far as where the person would be able to deal with it. And, well, there you go. You're going to get the coronavirus. We got to quarantine you. See how that would work. So other tests he goes in here as well. The so-called PCR test, which has many procedural problems and requires expert technicians who will not make mistakes. Takes a tiny sample of what might be the virus from a patient. It blows it up many times so it can be observed. However, in order for the virus to actually cause illness, millions and millions of virus particles must be present in the patient's body. So this PCR test says nothing reliable about the quantity of virus in the person. So you can imagine if you have a little bit in your system, it's not going to cause you any problems at all. They do a test, and all of a sudden you've been labeled coronavirus contaminated, and they throw you in the lockdown. And if it's true, one Chinese billionaire, I have no idea this is true, that they're actually doing that very same thing and bringing these people into, I think they're incinerating them, some ridiculous. If that is true, that is absolutely insane. So therefore, even when these tests are done on suspected cases of the coronavirus, they do not result in accurate knowledge about illness and disease, and so this would be an individual thing. So the article that I've just written on this will go through understanding the immune compromised people and patients. So this is very important to be mindful of as well. So if you're beginning, this is John speaking, writing here, if you're beginning to think it's easy to declare an epidemic and broadcast propaganda about it, you're right. Take a conventional set of symptoms present in people all over the world, claim a new virus is causing them, and you're off and running. You can report 500 or 1,000 deaths from this virus, and people will believe whatever you say or do next. They won't realize that this set of symptoms has been present in millions and millions of people for decades and centuries without the new virus. And they won't realize millions of people have already died without the new virus. This is what we're talking about, the millions of people that died from one of the symptoms that they're claiming with coronavirus, which is pneumonia. So without proper testing, you're not quite sure what is happening in the country of China, where secrets are probably many. So here, global epidemics solely based on germ pronouncements without environmental investigations in contaminated water supply, open sewage, hunger, starvation, poverty, toxic chemicals, etc. are industries. Okay, they're business ventures. Their operations launched to control populations, force them to take vaccines. So stepping into this whole vaccine thing is basically, is that the reason, that this is kind of going on, where when an epidemic comes, one of the things, and we know this to be true, they're saying they're working hard on coming up with a vaccine, they're working hard, and in fact, I think for SARS, Canadian government spent X millions or X whatever, multi-millions of dollars, only to have it parked in a warehouse somewhere. It all blew over, But does it really blow over? You know, people have this thing about epidemics can happen. But in this article, it's really saying that are they really epidemics? That pneumonia happens anyway, and that China is heavy on toxicity and malnutrition. So there you go. Want to create it? Perhaps you can. Put a little bit of the coronavirus out there. Say it's the coronavirus. And in this case, cases are with no coronavirus. You know, China's epidemic cases with no coronavirus. So we have to think for ourselves. And there's much to go on through this article. I will try to find it on a website and post it down below. This is in an email. But here, here he goes into a little bit more humor, and he does talk about, they're launched and sustained as far as these operations and, the production of vaccines, and everybody wants to just follow that that's the best thing. And so it's kind of like the vaccine of the moment or the vaccine of the epidemic. And so as in the swine flu epidemics duds of 1976, you can go and search that information to find that, and in 2009, turns out to be quite damaging in the sense of the way people, will think about these things. And so he says, well, every vaccine can cause rare problems. All in all, they curb epidemics, and we must inject them. This is not what he's saying. It's just this is the kind of message that kind of gets out there, along with producing the vaccine for something that is not the problem, right? It's not the problem. So here we go. We got to think of this. We got to understand that one of the key things here is that it's maybe things don't always appear as they should be, and we're getting different information. So the simple thing, as he says, is what people need to know, and he gets into kind of joking here, that pigs don't, and the moon and cows and jumping doesn't happen. He talked about this a little bit, but the situation in China is new, and as of 2019, it's never happened before. And the lockdowns and the quarantines, so there must be a new explanation, which they are calling it the coronavirus. And this is how you get, World Health Organization involved. This is how you get people's attention and fear and everything going. This is how you get, it's very, we don't want anybody to die, but when you read the stats of pneumonia in China over the years, 2.7 million to 17 million die every year of pneumonia, and that's the key here. And China is loaded with toxicity and malnutrition. Those two things are very, very high in the sense. So there's what people are claiming, and there's what really is happening, and for the most part, we've been aware of toxicity from coal, from burning coal in China, and so many other things, and poisonous chemicals. In fact, in the Wuhan area, I don't know if you've seen pictures where it's almost like many things from around the world have been using China. They're probably getting money for it to dump a lot of waste. In fact, in one of the cities there in Wuhan, I actually looked up this myself, they were actually trying to put a couple of incinerator plants next to the cities, next to the towns, and already for months they've been protesting against this because it's been unhealthy for the people. They're already showing signs because you're burning, and anything that's burnt, that combustion of that's going to fall into the air. You've got rain coming down, and you've got it going into soil, you've got it going into, if they're growing their own gardens, the animals are eating, all of that. So is this, is this something that is helping us better understand the situation? That we don't need to, we can look at it in a different light, which I think is better than panic. And also just being leery, when there's money to be made, when things are to be done and stuff. Is it something like that? it's not necessarily a theory or a conspiracy theory here when all the facts are laid out for you by many different people, not just John here, who has, again, he has quite the bio, which I've read out already, but as an investigative reporter and a lecturer, and also the Pulitzer Prize as well nominated, and U.S. congressional seat, and so this fella here has been writing books and articles and stuff involved in this for many years, and he knows how to get his information or follow the rabbit down the hole, so to speak. So this was very interesting for me, because one of the things that I did not expect to come out of any information was the fact that there's already a case or cases that have been diagnosed with no coronavirus, and the fact that there's so many people in China already, and have been for years and decades, dying from pneumonia, which is one of the key symptoms. Many of the symptoms, as I talked in Live at 5, will overlap with each other, pneumonia, but when it comes to pneumonia and different other symptoms, there's one of the things that is, two things here that come out of this article that I know from all the studies from the doctors for my book, is toxicity, built up toxicity, and also nutritional deficiencies at a core. Now, we're not talking about injuries here, at the core of a lot of why people would get diseases, including cancer, including diabetes, and all these inflammatory things too as well. Unknown to us exactly, or known to us exactly, possibly not even to medical, because as much as there is one disease, I'll use cancer for example, the root cause is many different root causes, and it'll be different by one person versus the next, which is how and why they try to come up with protocols which are drug used, and the doctors know that chemotherapy treatment is poisoning the body, and if you survive, great. And it says in the medical books, I had a doctor say it to my face, it says it in their books, that chemotherapy treatment causes cancer. So it's out there, it's understanding and learning about it. What you can do about it is a great question. Prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So let's bring some, inspiration and motivation here into this mix. So the best thing to do is to ask questions. The second best thing to do is to have people that understand it in a way that they can relate this information to you but into your unique situation. Right? So I'm here to help as a practitioner, absolutely. But there's many different practitioners you may be guided to use this, or a friend, or you have one already. But we're all in a different place with what our knowings are, with our experiences are, with our understandings, with how much research we do, and right in all of that is beliefs, right? So it's best to be open instead of being closed, and that kind of thing. So I thank you for all coming on. Hello, Kathleen and Howard and Barbara, and there's really, hi John and Gary and Leslie. Hi Leslie. So the idea here is really to continue to be getting informed. Call it education. Can you spend your whole day on health education and educating yourself and reading tons of things? Absolutely. Overkill. Health-minded. Even for myself, I learned that a long time ago. But the idea is that you have to be able to discern when all of this is going on in some way, and that's where practitioners sometimes will have at least more than where you are, and some basic things to do perhaps, or but it'll be different with everybody. But this is important. This is important. And this particular article, and reading all this, really brings into, again, the escalating amount of diseases and conditionings that are happening around the world. If you ever go on to the diabetes I think diabetes.com or .net, but anyway, it's the global one. And you check out the stats for diabetes, and you check out where the diabetes is in the world. And, it's almost like there is no country on this planet that has access to processed foods, that has access to chemicals and things happening through farming and whatever, is not immune to diabetes. It seems like it's everywhere. And the crazy increase that they're expecting, but that is no different than cancer too as well. So you have to ask yourself, people, we all have to ask that question if we can. Why is that happening? When we have medical research going on, we have millions of dollars pouring into research, you have to ask yourself that question. Why is that? Now, I can tell you from first-hand experience with working with the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation here in Toronto, the chapter, for 15 years, primarily on the event that we had to raise money through corporate stationary bike-a-thon, they call it different now, but also 1 year on the board. I have to tell you, most of those millions of dollars are coming through from businesses that are involved in pharmaceutical, and they basically want to dictate what research they, it's almost like you go, well, I want to do an essay. Great, give me your title, and the teacher's going to improve, PhD, going to approve it, right? Similar like that. So I saw that firsthand, where the choices they had to make were because of the funding that they were getting and where it was coming from, and the very fact that the office space that they had was coming through like a pharmaceutical company. So you can't tell me they're not in bed with these charities, these medical. You're supposed to have Cancer Institute. They call it the cancer business now, not the cancer or the cancer. But the truth of the matter is that I wish it were different, but I can't tell you it's different, because in my experience, they hire people so people don't want to lose their jobs. So the fact that there is a cure for cancer, a cure for type 2 diabetes, and the fact that that actually exists is not of any concern of them. And I can tell you firsthand, I have given research to them, to the director, and it went nowhere. So this is, anyway, I could go on and on about that, but the idea is to understand maybe the bigger and larger picture here. It is easy to blame a virus to produce a vaccine. The whole thing around that story is that simple. So if in fact they have this Chinese epidemic where cases with no coronavirus, somehow that's being leaked out, then you have to question, you have to start to question more and understand and get this information. It doesn't mean we take it as truth, because I'm not the one testing these people and seeing the results that they have no coronavirus. But it is seemingly possible, and it's seemingly crazy that if we do our research and we look up to say that there were X number of millions of people dying in China, and the truth of the matter is they do have a lot of toxicity there and malnutrition. I'm going to say this just quite matter-of-factly, because I also found this out through somebody who's from China, and it was at a music concert, and he brought up this information. And you've heard of that classical piece called the Yellow River? Now, the Yellow River is one of the largest rivers in China that's way to the north, and it goes from almost one side of the country to the next. Wait till you hear these numbers. And this is not too long ago. This is, I'm going to say 40s, 50s, 60s, but in around there. 70 million, 90 million, those two numbers ring a bell, were killed by their own government and Japan. The majority of them, I think 50 million, were actually killed by the Chinese government themselves along that river. They call it, so there's this song that was written by a composer. Fortunately, he was able to do it, did it somewhere else, got it out, it exists. But that was written because of that atrocious thing, and so Japan was also part of it as well. So we're talking less than 100 years ago. So the Chinese government can absolutely be capable of that if they were capable of doing that in the past. And if we just understand certain numbers about pneumonia, 2.8 million to 17 million deaths per year. And there's a source. I'll put the source down below, and I'll also try to find John's, because he usually puts in a blog, I'll put that below. And I'll put my article link down below. And then this video is being taped, and I'll put that on YouTube as well. I mean, what else can we say? But let's be educated. But the key thing is, regardless of what's kind of going on, we have to promote less toxicity in our environment, number one. And they've already talked about climate change. I've talked about this. You plant a tree every year for the next 5 years, because they help with the environmental toxicity of that nature. Otherwise, buy less things with food coloring. Buy less things with artificial sweetener in. And having worked for Weston's, which had Loblaws, and having direct conversations with the executives, and the president of the U.S., Weston Bakeries, because I could get cheaper whole wheat flour, although you buy whole wheat flour for more money. So anyways, this calculation I did for them, say, look, if you promote more whole wheat bread, you will make more money. And the question to that was, we have to sell what the people buy. Okay? They'll produce what the people buy. So I'm going to leave you with this note. Your dollars speak huge volumes when it comes to what manufacturers and producers and probably political leaders will do in the end game here. Huge volumes. So even if you just sat on your tush, didn't say anything, didn't tell anybody about this at all, or you kind of just talked to people about their buying power. But if you just did that, if more and more people just did that, instead of getting in the craziness of drama and theatrical and this and that and taking sides, when most people don't have the education to speak to the science of this or the background, right? So keeping it simple for people is going to be the easiest thing. And again, with your dollars and with your actions, you are going to lead the children to a cleaner world, and you're going to lead companies coming in and producing less toxic and doing less toxic things. End of story. So how you spend your dollars is, again, speaks volumes, because I was told that from the Loblaw executive as well, regarding certain things about pop. You walk down the whole thing and you go, holy, do people drink that much pop and eat that much chips that they actually have to have a whole, I'm not going to swear, aisle of it? It's insane. But the truth of the matter is as long as the people are buying it, they're going to stock it on the shelves. Simple. Loblaws does not get political. So as much as we go, hey, we want you to tell these, the GMOs and do that, no, and rightfully so, it's not their job. So education, being informed, and knowing that your dollars speak volumes. They'll speak volumes to Loblaws. Loblaws is not going to take up expensive shelf space to put something on there if you're not buying it. It's as simple as that. And then they'll communicate that to the manufacturers. They'll get the feedback for them. So you do have to kind of go to advertisers and just I don't care what you say, stop watching the advertisers or whatever it is. We don't have to get angry. That's so important here. Just leave that away. Just informing, educating, and speak volumes with your dollars. Very simple. Very, very simple. But happy to answer any questions here. It's great to see everybody on board here. Do we wish millions had this information? Absolutely. You know, absolutely. And slowly but slowly, more and more people are, you know, there's funny sayings, you know, getting the red pill or whatever, waking up. You know, just put all of that aside. But the idea is being informed and educated is key and critical for making decisions instead of having people make decisions for us, right? So we have that, and we have the free will, especially here in Canada. We're not communist or whatever it is we want to label it. Let's not talk politics exactly, but the idea is we have the free will here in Canada. If you're in the US, absolutely, you know, you can do so many things. So let's focus on that. So I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody, or bye for now. And you've kind of got the gist of what I'm saying. I'm going to focus on getting the links down there before the end of the day. I have a call to make right now, but here we go, right? Just keep on going, people. Just keep on going. But I'm here if anybody needs. That's what I do for a living, but I surely just enjoy bringing information to people that they haven't no clue about, you know, just based on the news and what they choose to make news of. So there you go. Take care, everyone. Take care of yourself. Make your dollars count, because that is huge, and your actions will count too. So get right on planting a tree. You know, get right on planting that tree, and who everybody, you know, your families. I think every spring, Toronto, you can sign up for a tree. They have like this adopt a tree program, and you get these little trees and plant them wherever. You know, I think all of the fields across Ontario should be planted with trees lining the streets. It would be even better on our car tires, whatever. But we can go on. Anyway, take care, everyone. Bye for now. Best of health. Make your dollars count.